everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video must add for week 2 of the fantasy hockey season. Last week, gave you 5 guys to pick up. The guys overall, I would say pretty solid. Obviously, Dylan Guenther we knew he was going to come back down to earth, but he's going to be a good pickup for the entire season. Victor Olofsson is really unfortunate. He did get hurt in that game against Washington after scoring. With like 5 minutes left, he went flying into the boards. He was on crutches after the game. Not looking good because we haven't heard anything from the Golden Knights about his status yet, so which is really unfortunate because it seemed like he was going to have a really good year. Connor Zary, 3 points last week. Calgary continues to buzz. We'll talk about the Flames in this video as well. And then Anthony Beauvillier on that Crosby line, creating offense. Wasn't able to find the stat sheet last week, which is unfortunate. And then Alex Laferriere, the guy who was like 2% rostered last week, 3 goals in 4 games last week. Scored 2 goals in that game against Ottawa, I believe, playing with Kopitar and Kempe. Got switched to that Turcotte line, still scored against Montreal. So pretty solid week overall. I have 6 guys to pick up for week 2. Let's get it. All right, so the first 2 guys we're going to be picking up this week, and it really depends on what you need because they act as pretty much the opposite of each other. Jonathan Huberdeau and Blake Coleman on the Calgary Flames. They both play 3 games next week, but these are 2 guys that are in that 50 to 40% roster range. So guys in leagues that have, 10 to 12 guys, the 14 team leagues probably not available, but if they are, I would go get these guys. It seems like the Flames, they have a new energy to them this year. Obviously a little bit of a roster overhaul from last year, especially defensively, but Ryan Huska has really switched around these lines, bringing over Kuzmenko. I love the line that Jonathan Huberdeau is on now. It's just a big, gritty line. Like I think all of them are at least 6'2". Like Huberdeau, it says he's listed at 6'1". When you watch him play and skate, he does not look like he's 6'1". I know obviously he's on skates, but he looks like he's the same height as Martin Pospisil, who is 6'2". And then there's also Anthony Mantha, who's now on that line as well. Another offseason pickup. He's 6'5". So that is a daunting line to go against. I think it benefits Huberdeau well, playing with big physical players. I think for whatever reason, it feels like it makes him more comfortable because he's leading the team in goals and points right now. He's 3 goals, 6 points. His stats aren't all that glamorous in terms of his analytics. Like he only has 6 shots on net. He's a 50% shooting percentage. But I think this is so important for Huberdeau to get some confidence early in the year, and then he can build off that. Continue to play well here. Like he's been a guy who's created a decent amount of offense over the last 2 years. Calgary as a whole has, but he hasn't been able to find the back of the net. So I think that's a really good sign early on. Then you have Blake Coleman. I've talked about Connor Zary, obviously on this channel multiple times throughout the offseason. Last week, Blake Coleman's on the other wing of Michael Backlund and Connor Zary. And I think it's time to add him, especially if you need a right winger for this week. He leads the team in individual expected goals for, but does not have a single goal to show for it. So he is creating a ton of offense whenever he is on the ice, but wasn't able to find the back of the net just yet. That will change. Playing on a line with these 2 guys, like Connor Zary, as I mentioned, has a couple goals, has a couple points. I think Blake Coleman is a guy that can find his production that we saw last year. 30 goals, 54 points, I believe it was. This line now with Connor Zary on the other side of that wing, it reminds me of when Mangiapane was there, when he scored 30-plus goals. It has a new energy to the line. It's a fun line. It's a hard line to play against, and the analytics show that their expected goals against so far, 45 minutes played together, is 1.8, which is low. That's pretty low. That's pretty solid. That'd probably put you in the top 50 of offensive lines in the NHL at this point. So they're playing well at both ends of the ice, and I think Blake Coleman, we're going to see that same 55 to 60-point season, and again, another 30-plus goals, which would definitely help you considering he does contribute in those other factors in terms of hits, block shots, and shots on goal as well. So Blake Coleman if you need a right winger and center, and Jonathan Huberdeau if you need a left wing and center for next week or for the rest of the season. All right, the next guy, Matthew Knies on the Toronto Maple Leafs, playing on that left wing, obviously, of Matthews and Marner, 28% rostered. The Leafs have 4 games next week, which is why I think this is the time you want to jump on Matthew Knies. Even in one of my leagues, I saw someone drop Matthew Knies, and I think heading into this week, considering the volume that they have, the Leafs, that being said, I think this is the perfect time to pick him up. I think this Matthews, Marner, Knies line is about to explode. We saw, obviously, a lot of production from those 3rd, 4th lines for the Leafs for the first couple of games. I think it's finally time Matthews and this line takes over. Matthews scored his first goal in that last game in that thrumping of LA that they had. The line has an expected goals percentage of 60%, an expected goals for per 60 of 4.24. That leads all lines on their team currently. The goals will start to come. Matthew Knies has 1 goal to show for it as well right now, 0 assists. He's looked pretty physical as well. He already has 7 hits in only 4 games so far. Definitely not something Marner's doing on that line. So he's contributing at other facets of just scoring. And I think the goals will end up coming considering the benefit of playing with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. Obviously 2 guys that will consistently be around that 100-point mark. And if you're playing on the other side of it, we've seen other guys like Bobby McMahon's a really good example of last year taking advantage of that opportunity. And now look at how he's doing so far. Obviously, he was scratched at the beginning of the season, but scored 2 goals in their last game and is starting to buzz. I think we could see the same thing for Matthew Knies here. I think he's a really good pickup for next week. Only 28% rostered, should be available in most of your leagues. All right, another guy, Anton Lundell on the Florida Panthers. This is a guy I think who broke out in last year's playoffs, especially in that series against Boston. Was a guy scoring a lot of goals. But now we're seeing him have a really good start to the year. And that's been elevated since Alexander Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk have been out. They've been out for 3 games, I want to say now, since last Saturday when they played Buffalo. They both got listed out in the morning. Florida plays 3 games next week, but Lundell's production with Barkov and Tkachuk out has been very solid. Since they went down, he has 5 points, 4 of those being goals. He's 3rd on the team in expected goals for, only behind Evan Rodriguez and Sam Bennett, which Lundell's role has always been that 3rd-line center. Not to say he hasn't been creating offense, but it hasn't been at the forefront of his mind, I would think. You know, he's more of like that utility center that they've always used, playing alongside Eetu Luostarinen, who at this moment right now, their other line mate is Sam Reinhart, considering those 2 guys have gone down. So I really like how Paul Maurice has kind of configured these lines. But even when Barkov and Tkachuk come back, I think Lundell's responsibilities and role, it won't diminish that much. He's playing 19 minutes per game. I think that will probably stay rather consistent. And it's just hard to ignore the fact that how well he was playing when your 2 star players are out. Star players recognize that as well, and that same production will come when those guys aren't or playing, but not obviously on the ice with him. If he can get a little bit more power play time, I think that'll obviously work into his favor. But at this point, 25% rostered, he has the ability to play that center and right wing on your fantasy hockey team. I think it is a very good pickup right now. All right, so my favorite pickup of the week is Paul Cotter on the New Jersey Devils. Started his career in Vegas. Obviously got picked up by New Jersey last year. I think this is his breakout season. I think he's in the midst of his breakout season, and it looks like it's trending in the direction that it will continue. Now, if you're looking at the stats obviously below there, his time on ice has got to be a little concerning. 13 minutes of ice time so far through 7 games. Obviously, we want to see that go up, but his production can't go unnoticed. 5 goals in his first 7 games. He had 4 goals in his first 6 games. Sheldon Keefe has always rewarded, those 3rd-line players that end up creating a certain amount of offense, ends up putting them with 2 of the best offensive players on the team. We saw him do it consistently with Marner and Matthews. You had guys playing with Marner and Matthews last year. You had Knies, you had Bobby McMahon, you had Holmberg. You had a lot of guys who were through their hot stretches, just being put with that first line. It seems like he's doing the same thing with Paul Cotter right now, and it looks like it's going to work because he did it against Ottawa, and Paul Cotter ended up scoring his 5th goal of the season. He's 3rd in individual expected goals for throughout the first 7 games of the season for this Devils team, and that's just total volume as well. So think about how much less he's playing than these guys, of all these other forwards, and he's still 3rd in expected goals for. On a line with Bratt and Hughes, and I will say it was the first time he started on the line with Hughes and Bratt, but he has been put with them in other scenarios and other games earlier this year. Their expected goals for percentage is 62%. They've played about 30 minutes together. After scoring a goal against Ottawa and continuing to produce, I don't see how Sheldon Keefe really takes him off this line at this point. It's not like there's really any big injuries that is the reason for this jump for Cotter. I think he's just mixing around lines and seeing what sticks. And this seems like it will stick. So I love Paul Cotter. I think he's a guy who could score 30 goals this season. And the fact that he's only less than 20% rostered still is crazy. All right, my last pickup of the week, and this is a longevity pickup. Let's go with that. Yegor Chinakhov on the Columbus Blue Jackets, 15% rostered, right winger on that first line with Sean Monahan and Kirill Marchenko, and they've been buzzing. He has 6 points, a goal, 5 assists through his first 3 games of the season for Columbus. They only have 2 games this week, is kind of what I mentioned. But I think if he plays 75 to 82 games, he could definitely have 70 points. Obviously, he's off to a great start, so it's not a huge overreaction or bold prediction to say he's going to score 70 points, but I think we're going to see the same consistency from Chinakhov and this line in general. I love this line of Columbus. Loved it last year when Voronkov was centering the 2 of these guys, but I believe he is still hurt at this point. And Sean Monahan leads the team in individual expected goals for right now. That will only benefit Yegor Chinakhov. And if you look at Chinakhov's numbers last year, 29 points in 53 games, so he's only playing like 15 minutes a game. Now he's almost playing 19. Those numbers will increase if you're playing an extra 4 minutes per game, creating the same amount of offense and the same level of production that you had when you were playing 15 minutes. His responsibility has this increased, and I think it's very valid considering the end of his season last year and how he started here. He's also on the point of the first power play. Someone's got to score on Columbus, and I'm going to almost guarantee that a bulk of it is going to come from this line this season as long as they stay together. Most of it will come from Kirill Marchenko and Yegor Chinakhov. I think a pair at this point, they're not going to be splitting up. So add Chinakhov right now. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of Must Add Week 2. Shout out to FanDuel Canada for sponsoring the video. The link is in the description below to download that app, start betting on some hockey. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.